In the last stream, we were working on automating our production of EMC using the energy condenser, and between streams, this has been chugging away a little while, not super long. The world isn't chunk loaded, unfortunately, but we have managed to get a fair few more diamonds, and we're now up to 858,000 EMC, which is quite a bit, but if we want to move forward deeper into Project E and Project EX, we're talking about millions of EMC, not hundreds of thousands. And so at some point fairly soon, we are definitely going to want to work on increasing the amount of EMC that we are generating, and that is very possible and actually fairly easy. But I do want to pivot a little bit today and instead work on two other things. I want to first work on getting a better source of power, because right now our only source of power is the mana flux field, which does work, but is not particularly sustainable. And if we want to get something like a refined storage system online, that is something that's going to passively use power forever. And so we kind of do need a passive form of power generation. And as we mentioned in the last episode, that is where I think the big reactors come into play. So this really shouldn't be too difficult to set up. For those unaware, the big reactors are just giant reactor machines that run, I believe, on uranium in this pack and produce power by burning that uranium. To build the reactor, we need reactor casing. Let me unbookmark some of this stuff over here. We also need a reactor access port. We need a reactor terminal, which I think is the controller. In older versions of bigger reactors, this used to be called the controller. We need reactor control rods, reactor fuel rods, and then optionally, we need some reactor glass, and I think that's about it. Now, most of these items are actually made using the reactor casing, and the reactor casing here really isn't too difficult. Last time we did manage to get our first uranium, although I can't help but notice that I do not have uranium saved. Is that because I didn't teach the system the ingot, or is that because I didn't actually make any uranium ingots? Let me check. We do have the uranium element. If we take that, we should be able to process that in our compactor into a uranium dust, and once we have that uranium dust, we can then take that. We'll also teach that to the tablet as well, just to be safe, and if we smelt that, we then have uranium, and going forward, we can of course use this infinite amount of uranium that we're getting from our infinite EMC generation to feed our reactor, ideally forever. So we'll take that, we'll add that as well to the transmutation tablet, and then we're going to want to get a bunch more of those uranium ingots so that we can make a ton of reactor casing. Along with the uranium, we need graphite, which also has an EMC value, and we need a bunch of iron. Now, I don't think that we really have a feasible furnace upgrade. The furnace here is not particularly slow, especially with our temporal pouch, although I would like a faster furnace. I think the only faster furnaces we have available to us are the dark matter and red matter furnaces from Project E, which are faster, but are also substantially more expensive. This one right here requires just over 1.6 million EMCs worth of dark matter, which is a little bit outside of our price range right now. We could spend a little bit of our time in the temporal pouch to get a bunch of EMC, but I don't think it's necessarily worth spending 1.6 million on getting a bunch of furnaces, especially when we can instead just get a bunch of compressed stone, make a few more furnaces, and then just sleep to accelerate the production of a ton of iron. Here we go. So now we've got 6 furnaces down. All of these are smelting iron dust. And so now if we just sleep in our bed here, we should get a nice fast acceleration on that smelting, and 6 stacks should be more than enough iron to get a massive reactor. And I don't really think that we're going to need that big of a big reactor, especially at this moment in the pack. Yeah, just after sleeping, we've already got almost 6 stacks worth of iron. We'll leave the rest going there, but that should be more than enough. Let's grab a bunch of graphite. We'll grab 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go 4 stacks for now. That should allow us to make a stack of reactor casing. Never mind 4 stacks of reactor casing, which I think is going to be way more than we actually need. So we can get rid of that. Then the reactor glass is also fairly straightforward. We'll come back to that because the glass does have an EMC value and is therefore super easy to make. And so now it's just a case of actually putting this down. So what I might do is I might move this Amadron chest because we don't actually need it to be here specifically, and we can always rebind it to a new chest in the future. And then over here, we'll put down the base for our reactor. So I think we'll go for a 5x5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 2, 3, 4, 5. You can build this as small as a 3x3x3, and you can build it as big as maybe like a 41x41x41. I don't know if that's the exact number, but you can build this thing pretty large. For now, though, we don't necessarily need something that big, and so we can go 5x5 on the base, and then we want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tall as well. Once we've got this frame down, then we need to decide how we want to fill this. So that is where the reactor control rods and the reactor fuel rods come into play. The more reactor fuel rods you have in the reactor, the hotter the reactor will get, but the more fuel you can burn and the more power you can generate. So for now, I think we'll put 5 fuel rods in, and by 5 fuel rods, I mean 5 kind of vertical fuel rods. I'm going to put one here, 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 and here, and each one is going to be 3 tall because that's the inside height of our reactor. So we need 15 of these reactor fuel rods. Again, super easy to make. We just need some more uranium and some more graphite. Boom, and boom. Nice. So these are going to go down inside of the reactor. You can kind of put these wherever you like, but I'm going to put mine like this. So they all have a bit of a gap between them. I believe if you put them right next to each other, they do run a little bit hotter and therefore burn a little bit more fuel. But this, I think, is completely fine. And then all we have to do is top each one of these fuel rods with a control rod. The control rod, you guessed it, super easy for us to make. It is going to require some redstone, and I don't think that we currently have any. We don't. However, if we look at the recipe for redstone, it is just strontium carbonate and iron oxide in the combiner, and because we've dissolved redstone before, we can get a stack of strontium carbonate and a stack of iron oxide incredibly quickly, and then just drop that into the combiner, boom and boom, and of course, if we give that a quick tap, and there we go, just like that, a stack of redstone that didn't require any mana whatsoever, and then we just need 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of those, and we're going to put those atop our pre-existing fuel rods. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll then fill in the remaining space with a reactor casing, like so. And then the only things left that we need now are the reactor terminal, which again seems very doable, does require a single diamond, but we do have access to many of those. And so, boom, there is the terminal. I'm going to place that right about here in the front. And then we probably need 2 reactor access ports. This does require 2 pistons, which does mean that we actually need to get some wood and some cobblestone, and might as well take it in plank form, and we already have the iron and the redstone, so making 2 is going to be nice and easy. We also need 2 Minecraft chests, 1 and 2, and with that we have 2 reactor access ports. The reason we need 2 is because one of these is going to be used to pump fuel into the reactor, and the other one is going to be used to pull waste out of the reactor. Now that all of these pieces are in, we could just fill the remaining walls here with reactor casing, and that would work. That would be a viable reactor, but I do think it's going to look a little bit nicer if we use reactor glass, which we saw before is super easy to make, and we need 9 here, plus another 9 here is 18, plus another 9 here is 27, plus 6 here is 33. And unfortunately, that's only 32. We're missing just 2 more glass pieces. That is completely fine. 1 and 2. And boom. So let's fill this reactor in. And boom, you'll know if you've made it correctly because it forms into this multi-block. Now, somebody in the Twitch chat has pointed out that I am a fool because there is one more thing that we actually need that is vital to the functioning of the reactor, and that is a power tap. The power tap is used to actually get power out of the reactor. The reactor does work without one, but without it, there's no way of getting any of the power out of the reactor. So I'll put that right about here. Let me try and grab that piece of glass, although I keep forgetting. If I wanted to, I could just right-click like that. I forget it every time, but that's fine. Let's do this. And now we can use one of these as a reactor input, and this one we're going to toggle to output. So that one will output the waste, the byproducts. So the question now is, if I put some uranium in here, and I might have to do this with a hopper. It used to be that you could put the fuel in manually. That is fine. Let me do one of these and one of these, and then let's try something like this. If I put uranium in there, that uranium should start to fill this fuel bar. And it does. You'll see the fuel is filling up. Every 1 uranium ingot equates to 1 bucket of fuel, and this reactor can hold up to 60 buckets of fuel. Once we've got a bit of uranium in there, we should then just be able to toggle this reactor status button, and that's going to turn it on, and we're going to start to generate 6,000, 7,000, about 7,500 redstone flux per tick, which is a lot of power. It's a lot more power than we're generating over here, and it's also potentially a lot more power than we're going to need, although I don't quite remember the power usage here. The fusion controller only needs 300 RF per tick, and the fission chamber also only needs 300 RF per tick. So the 7,500 redstone flux per tick that we're making there is maybe a little excessive. I do think we can make it produce more power just by filling it up with uranium. I think if we do something like that, it's going to fill up, and then usually when it is full on fuel, it generates more power. Yeah, you'll see we're already up at 8, 9, almost 10,000 redstone flux. You can even take this one step further. Right now, our efficiency, our fuel usage rate is 3.0 millibuckets per tick. So that's how many millibuckets of fuel it's going to use per tick. There are 20 ticks per second, and of course, 1 piece of uranium is 1 bucket, which is 1,000 millibuckets. So it's going to take a while to burn through 60 buckets of uranium. We could, if we wanted to, put in some coolant blocks to make the reactor more efficient. Will it explode? It shouldn't explode, no. It's not strictly necessary, but I am intrigued as to how well the coolant would work here. So if we were to, for example, take some diamonds, I think we could use these as coolant blocks to try and make this more efficient. The coolant blocks want to go in the space between these fuel rods, like this. You can use a bunch of stuff as coolants. It kind of varies depending on which fork of big reactors you're playing. I've not actually played with the bigger reactors mod before, so I'm not entirely certain on how well this is going to work or on what materials you can use. I'm going to try not breaking the reactor controller, because I think if I do that, we might end up losing some of the fuel that's in here potentially. Let's do this, this, and this, and then I have mistakenly not put my power tap back in. I need to do this, and then around here, I need to replace in the power tap right about here. So now, if we go ahead and turn this on again, yeah, you'll see that we've managed to squeeze out a little bit more power here. We're up to over 10,000, up at 11.2 thousand redstone flux per tick. And you'll see on the right here, we're up at almost 10 million redstone flux. When this bar fills up, we will have backlogged 10 million redstone flux, which, to be honest, might be enough to last us for the remainder of the series, potentially depending on whether or not anything more power intensive becomes available. But this is pretty good. This is working as intended. Over here, waste ejection is set to enabled, and so I think that we might just be able to throw down a storage drawer on the front of that port, and that might just eject. It's quite possible we might have to manually like extract the waste fuel, but if I do this, it's possible that might just eject any waste that comes out of the reactor. For some reason, the reactor has ejected the cyanide, which is the waste resource, into the hopper, which is odd because this is set to input. I'm not quite sure why it did that, but either way, we'll put the cyanide in there, and so hopefully future cyanide should make its way into that drawer there. Now that that is taken care of, we should have more than enough power to start with a little bit of refined storage. Now, to do that, we need to make a raw basic, raw improved, and raw advanced processor. None of those are too difficult to make. They all are basically the same recipe. They require silicon, iron, diamonds, or gold, redstone, and then the processor binding. And the processor binding is the only bit that's a little tricky. It requires a slime ball and 2 string. The only tricky part about that is the string. And now that we have access to the dissolver and the combiner, it really shouldn't be too difficult for us to get basically an infinite amount more string. If we can kill one singular spider, we should then be able to break that string down into its elemental components. And then, of course, those should have an EMC value. And just like we did with redstone a moment ago, we should then be able to essentially reverse engineer all of the string that we need going forward. We just need a single string. All right, so 1 string later, let's drop that into the dissolver. That is going to get us absolutely nothing because you are not guaranteed to get the keratin that we need. The string here is just made with keratin, but there's only a 50% chance you get keratin. And so in that case, let's go and try get at least 1 more, but maybe even a few more string. Let's try this again. We got 3 more string here. There is a chance that we don't get any, but we got fairly lucky. We got 2 out of the 3, which is quite handy. Let's drop those into here, and now we can take out as much of this keratin as we need. If we have enough EMC, that is. The keratin is a little expensive, and we can place that into here. And if we select the correct recipe, which in this case is string, and of course in this case is made in the compactor, not in the combiner. Let's try that again. Recipe, string, select, and lock. We can then throw in the keratin, give it a quick tap, and we've got basically as much string as we like. I think 22 is going to be more than enough for us going forward. Let's quickly top up our EMC with any diamonds in here. I did, by the way, swap the block of dark matter that was in here for diamonds between streams, just because it allows us to get EMC more regularly. The block of dark matter does have more EMC, but it means that we've got to wait until the energy condenser here accumulates 200,000 EMC before we can kind of cash it in and use it. So it's actually a little bit more beneficial to us to have diamonds that we can collect regularly. The only way that diamonds would be a problem is if we were actually filling up the energy condenser with diamonds, because so many of them were being made. At that point, we would want to switch to a higher EMC item, but for the time being, we're not generating that much EMC that diamonds are going to be a problem for us. Back over here, we do have slime balls in our transmutation tablet, and so if we do something like this, we get a bunch of processor binding. I'll take a stack of this because I think we are going to need quite a bit of it to get into refined storage here. And once again, I'm going to grab a few more stacks of iron. Let's do 3 stacks of iron. We'll throw those in here, and I think I'll also get 3 stacks of gold as well. Diamonds, of course, have an EMC, so we don't have to smelt those, but this should allow us to make more than enough raw processors for a basic refined storage system. Okay, so we don't have to wait for these to finish smelting. This should be a good enough start to actually get going with refined storage here. Let's grab some diamonds. We probably don't need that many. And so in order to make this, we just need to grab some silicon, which we made last time, and we have in the system here. And then other than that, it's just redstone, and we do have some redstone. So let us see. We'll start by making a couple of raw basic processors. I'm going to make 16 of these, and then I'm going to make maybe 8 of the gold variant. And then we'll make also 8 of the diamond variant as well. And we can always make more in the future should we need them. Now we just need to smelt each one of those up into their actual processor form. Once we have those, this last one's still going, but that is fine, we unlock a few other options here. So I think we need to go this way and get a destruction core and an annihilation core. Neither of those are too difficult. They're both made with the basic processor. One is crafted with nether quartz, the other is crafted with glowstone. We might have both nether quartz and glowstone in here. Let me quickly check. Nether quartz we have, and glowstone we can get from our transmutation tablet if we need it, but we do have dust available to us, and so let's do one of these. In fact, I'm going to get 2 of those, and let's also do 2 of the destruction cores. Nice. So, interesting. I'm not quite sure why the pack is, like, why the quest line is set up this way, like why it wants us to make an exporter and a wireless terminal before we've even made a refined storage controller. And so I'm going to pivot off of the quest book track just a little bit here. I can put the gravity away for now, and I can put my grave dust away as well. But let us get a refined storage controller. This one right here. It seems fairly straightforward. It is going to need another machine casing, and that makes me think that we're probably going to need quite a few more machine casings, because we need a controller. I'll bookmark that. That needs 1 casing. We then ideally do also want to get a drive cage that also requires another machine casing. This right here is just a regular chest, like any chest will do. We could then do with a crafting grid, which is this one right here. This requires a grid, which again requires a machine casing. So already that's 3 machine casings, but I think with these 3, that should be basically everything that we need, or basically all of the machine casings that we need. So let me quickly go ahead and make 3 more. I'll make maybe 4 more just to be safe. I'm going to make 4 more peripheral casings. Alright, so a little bit of work later. We have 16 flux dust, we have 16 terrasteel ingots, and we should have everything we need to make a couple of peripheral casings here. I will make a few of these, although people are telling me that the standard way of making flux dust, which is obtained by compressing redstone dust with bedrock and obsidian, does work in this pack and might be cheaper than the current method that we're using of turning 8 redstone into 2 flux dust. So what I might look at doing is getting a flux block, although we'll come to that in a second because I think we're going to need the Flux Networks mod to move power around from our reactor to our refined storage system. So we'll take the peripheral casing, and for the time being, we'll upgrade that to machine casing, of course, with a little bit of nether brick. How much nether brick do we have? 41 is going to be more than enough. And then nether quartz, we've also got 44 as well, which is fantastic. Let's go and craft up a bunch of quartz enriched iron. Again, we need 16 here to get our 4 machine casings. And now it should be pretty straightforward crafting the rest of this stuff. So crafting the controller just needs some more quartz enriched iron. And boom, there is our refined storage controller. Next up on the list is the disk drive. This also seems fairly straightforward, and it looks like, again, the only thing we're really missing here is more quartz enriched iron. We are, by the looks of it, once again out of iron here. We've got a ton of gold, but no iron. So I'll grab like 3 more stacks here, and I'll once again fill up these furnaces and maybe do a quick sleep to accelerate that. That should be a decent amount of iron here. Let's get at least, let's get quite a bit more quartz enriched iron here, because I'm pretty sure all of these recipes do require quartz enriched iron in one form or another. And then the only other thing we're missing there is a chest. So we'll just take 2 logs, craft up the old Minecraft chest, and boom, that gets us the disk drive. So I think what we'll do is we'll place down the controller and we'll place the disk drive down next to it like that. Back over here, the crafting grid does require a regular grid, and the regular grid is just a bit more glass here. We have all of the components, and we are out of EMC. We're at 51, which is not ideal, although we do have, once again, a few stacks of diamonds over here. That EMC generator already paying for itself, but we are definitely starting to tear through the EMC a lot faster now than we were previously. Nevertheless, boom, there's a regular grid. This allows you to pull items out of your refined storage system and put them in, but you can't craft within the grid, which is not ideal. A regular crafting table, of course, is just for planks, and boom, there's our crafting grid. I'm going to place that directly above the controller, right about there. And then the final piece of the puzzle here is actually just getting a storage disk. So with refined storage, if we type in storage disk, there are multiple tiers of storage disk. They start at 1K and they go up to 64K. The 1K disk requires a 1K storage part, and the 1K storage part is made with glass, redstone, quartz enriched iron, and silicon. And you need 3 of those if you want to upgrade to a 4K storage part. So let's get a bunch of glass, and we could probably do with more redstone. I think I do have more backed up in here. I do indeed. Fantastic. So let's make a 1K part. And in fact, let's make 3 1K parts. We can then upgrade that to a 4K part. That does require quite a few basic processes, but we do have the ability to make that happen. And then to make it into a disk, we just craft the part with redstone, glass, and nether quartz, and we can place this 4K storage disk into the disk drive. And it's a fairly straightforward system. The 4K storage disk can hold 4,000 items. Right now, I think we almost certainly do have more than 4,000 items, so it's almost certain that we will need more than one 4K disk, or potentially a 16K or 64K disk. This disk drive can hold up to 8 disks, so in theory, you could put 8 1Ks in, or you could mix and match and have some 1K, some 4K, whatever you like. But now we just need to get power into our refined storage system. And I think temporarily, what I'm going to do, actually, as janky as it is I'm just going to move this over to the controller. Right now, we only need power for this. Like, if we put the controller here, that should light up. It totally does. We can then put the crafting grid here, and we can put the disk drive here, and we can put our disk in here. One other thing we could do, there's a quest for an exporter down here, but if we can get an external storage, we might be able to save on a ton of disk drives, because the external storage allows the refined storage system to access items in other inventories. And I'm wondering if we can put an external storage down on our cloud chest and give the system access to basically everything in the cloud chest. So the only thing we're missing here for the external storage is 2 regular old chests. We do have 17 chests in our cloud storage here. Boom and boom. So let me see then. I am fairly certain that we can break this and replace it down over here, but just to be safe, I'm going to grab another cloud chest, and I'm going to grab another balloon, and I'm just going to put that down like here, like this. This now also has access to all of our stuff. Perfect. So if we put the external storage there, and this is where it's either going to crash or be great, if we do that in here, I was really hoping we'd be able to see everything connected to our external storage, but we don't. If I were to break this chest and replace it with like a regular chest, we should be able to see how it's supposed to work, or how I was hoping it would work. If I take like a regular chest and I put that down right about here and I put some stuff into it, we can see that stuff in here. So unfortunately, it seems like the cloud storage isn't refined storage accessible, which is a shame because it would have been very easy to get a very large amount of storage if that did work. But instead, what we can do is we can use a mixture of our storage disks and potentially hook up the external storage to some storage drawers. For now, what we'll do is we'll break this because it's not needed, and we can just start putting items into here, and that's going to start filling up this disk drive right here. This is beneficial as opposed to the cloud storage though, because we can just craft within the crafting grid. So now going forward, if we wanted to say, for example, make some chests and we had some wood in here, if I wanted to make the chest, I could type in chest into JEI and I can shift click that recipe in. If we don't have the items, it will say that, but we can just craft the wood like so, and then we can just instantly in here craft the chest. Nice, and it's ready to craft with. Again, there's no back and forth between the crafting table and the cloud storage. It's a shame about the external storage. It's a real shame that doesn't work. I have a feeling that if I were to try and put all of the stuff that we have into here, we're going to very quickly fill up a 4K storage disk, although I'm also fairly certain that we should be able to make more storage disks fairly easily as well. And of course, we do want to make sure that things like this charcoal go back into the transmutation tablet. We don't have to store those in our system, and we can use this external storage on things like storage drawers. So right now we've got this storage drawer here for cobblestone. If we were to move this over here, of course, we could run a refined storage cable all the way over to the drawer over there. But for now, for proof of concept, if we did this, the system has access to that cobblestone externally. And if we set the priority of this to something higher than the priority of the disk drive, we'll set this to say -10, that's going to mean that the refined storage system will try and put things into here before it puts them into the disk drive. So it should always try and put cobblestone in there first and foremost. Never mind, it looks like we totally do have enough space in one 4K disk to hold basically everything that we have. We only had 2,440 items. I did put my pickaxe away, which is less than ideal. Let me grab that back. So we can kind of get rid of this for now. I don't really think we're going to need it if we can't connect it to our refined storage system. And in the future, we can also potentially look at getting a wireless crafting grid from refined storage. Once we have more ender pearls, which I think we'll look at getting in the next episode, we can get a wireless crafting grid, and that's going to allow us to wirelessly access all of the stuff connected to our refined storage system, which is just going to make crafting a whole heck of a lot easier. Being able to access our transmutation tablet and all of the items that we have available to us wirelessly wherever we are in the base is going to make us just so much more efficient. So next time we'll come back, we will probably look at getting some Flux network stuff going. This is going to allow us to move our power away from the reactor, especially if we are going to look at building the fusion and fission reactor. We're going to have to move this refined storage system off the power tap and start to move some of that power between other machines. We could also look at potentially hooking these up as well, so we don't have to rely on having mana for those machines. I think we'll also potentially look at building more of these cosmic dust generators and improving the rate at which we're generating EMC so that we can then begin processing our way through the higher tier EMC links, through the power flowers, and getting to some crazy high EMC values. And then at some point, we can start to look at trying to complete this pack with some endgame content. For now, though, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of UniversIO there.